I mean, Tuchel and the rest of them, Simon, find themselves in the middle of all this, and it's none of the doing.
They do.
If they need assistance or if they need information on a regular basis, should they be getting more of it from the Premier League?
Not really. I mean, I think, honestly, with the greatest will in the world, if we want to give players a ready-made excuse to suggest that what's going off the field is going to affect them, then with due respect, most people that have owned a football club, work in a football club, know that the players will be focused on what's affecting them, and what's affecting them will be if they don't get their wages at the end of the month. That will be their primary concern. Of course, we're a much more aware society. Of course, it's not fair for me to say that players aren't conscious of the ramifications of what's going on in other parts of the world. But Thomas Tuchel's handling it relatively well. He doesn't like some of the questions he's been asked, and they're stupid questions, some of them. And you'll say they have to be asked, and I'll say I don't think they should be asked. I don't think there's any necessity to ask whether he's going to stay till the end of the season. I think that's just trying to create a headline, but I thought we handled it well. I thought we handled it well at the beginning of the week when he said, I'm not a bloody politician, stop asking me questions. I can only do what I'm doing. I'm a football manager. There are far more important things. And Peter Cech, coming out and talking in certain ways about hand to mouth. Well, yeah, ultimately, Chelsea, when they finished the season last year, had 20 million quid in the bank. Now, everyone knows that they're being propped up by Roman Abramovich, and the idea that they haven't got any money, and then they're turning around and saying, well, actually, what we want to do is we want to increase... We haven't got any money, it's hand to mouth, but we want to increase the expenses on a match day from 500 grand to 900 grand.
Yeah.
How does that work out?
Yeah.
How do you need more money to run a match day experience when you've got no money in the bank? And of course, when we're talking about what revenues they may or may not be getting, well, look, if they're only not getting 13,000 tickets per game, that's only 900 grand per game that they're getting in that they're not able to get from 13,000 fans that aren't coming into the ground because they've already had the season ticket money.
Right.
We have to get context. There is a lot of hyperbole and a lot of sensationalism going on around the place, and because of Abramovich and because of the amount of money he's pumped in, there will be the backstop that it's going to collapse underneath it. Chelsea will be sold. The government will facilitate a solution. The noises are already that that Abramovich has made no objection to what's going on. He's been removed from the equation. You'll get people buzzing around it like Nick Candy that put themselves in front of the camera, and out of it will come somebody that wants to buy the football club, and they're probably going to get a deal. Sure. In real terms, they're probably going to get a deal.
But I mean, I'm not entirely surprised, O'Neill, that someone like Thomas Tuchel is stopped in his tracks by what's going on around him. Now, you suggested to me earlier on you've been in a similar predicament. Am I right?
Well,
when you were on a plane,
I was just saying to you that players don't get affected. When I was at Palace with Simon, I was on a plane up to Newcastle when we were told that they'd gone into administration, etc. And we got off the plane and we were going to go on the bus, and the bus driver came to me and said, I'm sorry, we can't take you to the hotel. I said, what do you mean? He went, you've gone into administration. I had to pay for him with my credit card, which, in fairness, Simon still owes me 350 quid. I've just thought about that just now. But it never affected the players. The players don't worry about anybody but themselves, really. That's how players are when I played and when they play now. And it's the other people that you feel sorry for. But I can't see the stewards, etc., and people like that being laid off because they need them all. So they'll sort it out. I don't know the ins and outs behind a club like Simon does, for example. But I know for a start it won't affect the players or the manager. The manager will. I mean, there are some stupid questions, Jim, but every manager gets it, and you just have to. Sometimes you just have to ignore it. Sometimes after the game and a bad result, it's difficult to ignore.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Simon,
it's a huge story, and I understand why it has to be dug into. It's a huge story across the board. People are going to start picking at scabs now, start pulling back plasters and looking at the whole ownership model. You're going to bring, Oliver Holt wrote a brilliant article in the Mail on Sunday about the Premier League's responsibility of how we are now allowing people of a certain outlook and set of ideals and regimes to buy our football clubs and do with them what they wish. And they do with them what they wish because really and truly they're about trying to legitimise something or to sports wash or whatever they want to achieve. This is a well-trodden path for me. Yeah. It's now becoming a slightly more interesting path for the rest of the world because people are now starting to say, well, hang on just a minute, right? We've all got our knickers in a twist, and justifiably so, for what's happening in the Ukraine, but we've got Saudi Arabia dropping bombs in Yemen. We've got the Chinese murdering the Muslim Uyghurs. So there's a whole... And these people own our football clubs, and we're happy for it, and our fans are cheering for them, and there's a reckoning coming, I think. Money will always define everything. Money purifies everything. The reason why we went into the Gulf and dealt with the Iraqis was for oil and money. So everything is about money when it comes down
Simon,
to it.
to be fair to you, I mean, you talk about Oliver Holt writing what he wrote over the weekend.
It was a very good article.
You also wrote an extremely good article in the Times on Saturday, and you finished with Chelsea should never have been permitted to put themselves in a position where they were reliant on Abramovich's investment for their continued existence. Premier League clubs have the highest broadcast income in the world. They don't need to take dirty money to legitimise dubious people and regimes.
Yeah.
That's strong language.
But it's not wrong. Whether we like it or we don't like it, we can look at the Newcastle takeover and say, oh, for the love of God, I understand what Newcastle fans want. I understand they want a better ownership model than Mike Ashley. I understand it. But when we look at some of the ownership models that we've got and understand what's going on behind it, we shouldn't really want it for these wonderful football clubs. And the Premier League has some responsibilities. Very difficult. 19 years ago, I made some observations there, but I also qualified by saying 19 years ago, this was the first foreign ownership model. No one really knew what they looked like. No one really understood what their intentions were.
Sure.
But when you get to Sheikh Mansour and when you get to PIF, you do know.
Right.
You do know what they are capable of. You do know what they're trying to achieve and why they're doing it.
And in a sentence, Neil, do you feel for Eddie Howe yesterday when he's asked about 81 people executed in Saudi Arabia? What do you want to say about that? Your owners are Saudis. Eddie says, I stick to football. Would you have done the same?
I think he's got to do, because I don't think football people know enough about these other things, the owners of other clubs, what they're doing behind the scenes, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, all I know at the moment is it's absolutely frightening me about the future of our kids, and that when I look at what's happening in Ukraine, you know, I walked around London last night and I thought, can you imagine if you just looked over there and all the buildings are just bombed?
Exactly.
It could be anybody, couldn't it? So we've all got to stick together. I agree with that, but I can't see how they're going to legislate all these owners now. I can't see the Premier League stopping these owners coming from all over the globe.
Yeah.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.